Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far, and with there still being an outside chance that OpTic Cellium actually becomes a thing if the Arcitys deal fails to go through, many have raised the question, is Cellium's playstyle actually detrimental to FaZe's results over the last couple of seasons? Nadeshot seems to believe that might be the case, and even Standy from Toronto says it's actually easy playing against Cellium because you know he's going to be so far removed from the rest of his team. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to discuss. Firstly, I'll leave this link down below. Quick giveaway. We're doing these UpTic CDL cards. You guys may or may not have seen our major one in Raleigh. We're doing a giveaway on the Break and Win side, so feel free to get involved in that one. Quick update as well on the Challenger side. We knew for a couple of days now that Parasite is making the glorious return. The 2013 World Champion will be playing with John, Fellow, and Geo. John, of course, didn't really know he was still playing, to be fair, but we've seen him last year, Los Angeles Thieves in Cold War. Last year, the Paris Legion, unfortunate circumstances there. And yeah, 2016 World Champion, of course, John. Fellow, I thought he was potentially gonna, I think he said he's gonna give it one more year, so see if that works out for him. Geo there rounding out the team. And then Paul X's team. This is actually the former Decimate Gaming squad, which Parasite was coaching before he knocked them out of the tournaments in Raleigh when he subbed in for that European team. But Paul X will join those guys with Venom, Mock, and Hollow. Hollow, you guys might remember that name from the OpTic Gaming Los Angeles team a few years ago when he was alongside Drazah at the end of that season. But yeah, Paul X pretty much confirmed now that he's gone from that London team. Now with Paul X coming in there, that means that iLLeY and 2Real are now free agents. Strange in a way, because iLLeY I thought was maybe their best player actually from that team. 2Real as well, of course, also finds himself in a similar boat, so maybe there's some future there for iLLeY that we will have to wait and see to find out what that might potentially be. So let's talk Major 1 then. Of course, some great results from some teams. New York Subliners, Seattle Surge made the finals. Some not so good results for other teams. OpTic top 12, but even FaZe, right, they were top 3 this event. I mean, it's kind of a classic for FaZe at this point. They make Sunday, and they kind of fail to deliver against the best teams. They've often been the second best team at events last season. They made 4 finals in Vanguard, lost all 4 of them to 4 different teams, I'm pretty sure. Similar story to what happened to them back in Modern Warfare, when they made, I think, 7 finals, and they went 2-5 in their grand finals that season. And it really was only Cold War where they dominated the season. The question was after Cold War, after they won 4 out of the 6 events, is this a dynasty? If they win 1 more event in Vanguard, do they become a dynasty? But it turns out they did so poorly on Sunday, they dropped Arcitys for Slasher. Now, I don't think that this Slasher move has necessarily made them worse or anything, but I think it's kind of a question whether Arcitys was the problem over there, or whether there's something else going on. Now, we believe that Arcitys might, of course, now end up on the OpTic side of things, and speaking of OpTic, actually, I thought this is kind of cool. Finally, we have some decent new pictures for the players this year. The last couple of years, the lighting has just been terrible. I mean, there's a lot of pictures I still use on the video from Modern Warfare, and even the Cold War season, because the pictures are actually decent. Like last year in Vanguard, the lighting was so bad. Thankfully, this year they're pretty, well, they're better for sure. And I mean, look on the right-hand side here, we've got the battle of the stashes between Insight and Scump. There might be some other contenders coming into the mix here, but yeah, pretty good pictures I thought nonetheless. This Scump one we might have to use for the rest of the year. Stay tuned for the thumbnails over the coming days. I'll start to implement more than likely some of the new pictures for the season, and thankfully the lighting's actually good this year, so can you believe it? But yeah, this is the battle of that side. Now, kind of a stash going on with Simp right here, but we've got to talk about FaZe, because top 3 again. They of course came pretty much second all of last season, with 1 top 3 thrown in there towards the ends. And what exactly is going wrong with FaZe? Because I've got to say, watching Simp play for many years, this guy might just be the most talented player that I've ever seen play Call of Duty. He's absolutely absurdly good. And in Cold War, the key reason why they were so good is that Simp and aBeZy were unbelievably efficient as an SMG duo. They got so many kills, they absolutely did it all on the map. And since then, we haven't really seen the same Simp and aBeZy. Last year wasn't the case. So far this year, we haven't really seen too much. That aBeZy's been good, Simp's been good in pockets, but nothing consistent. Now, I'd also love to see a statistic. I don't know if Brian Satt is watching, maybe I'll have to DM him, but I'd love to see a statistic for all the players in the league, which is a pretty big effort, I've got to say. But the differential between KDs when players are winning and KDs when the team is losing. So, you know, let's say you're a Mack, for example, or you're an X-Factor player in general. More than likely, the difference for Mack between when he wins a series and when his team loses a series is quite significant, because usually he's getting fried if they lose, he's probably doing rather well if they win. That's a generalization. But, you know, Cellium, I want to know what his number is. Is there any difference for Cellium between when he's losing and when he's winning? Is he always dropping a 1.3 regardless? And, you know, is that a bad sign, right? You'd expect to have a worse KD when you lose than when you win, but I don't know what's going on there, right? So it's been a question that's raised last season and has continued here. I think with Slasher joining, their Search and Destroyers got better, but their respawn again on the Championship Sunday when facing other top teams, Seattle Surge and also Subliners, they got pretty much outclassed substantially, and their respawn record is not looking particularly good at all. So what's going wrong? To me, it feels like their SMG duo is no longer as impactful. Simp and aBeZy are no longer these absolute superstar godlike players that will just destroy any SMG duo in the league. You've got to look at Standy and CleanX, you've got to look at Hydra and Kismet, even Shotzzy and Pred if that's a thing. Like, there's other SMG duos that can compete. And I don't necessarily think those SMG duos can compete on pure skill, even though some of them can, but I think it's kind of more of a playstyle thing, and even Nature implies this, and Standy certainly says this, that he feels like now Simp has been pushed into this kind of role player role. He's got to do the dirty work and fill gaps and stuff, rather than just outright slaying like maybe a Scump would do in that kind of primary SMG role. And even Nature, I thought, was pretty big balls, to be honest, to raise this question to Crowder. And Standy says from Toronto that it's so easy to play against Cellium and the FaZe guys, because you know where he's going to be, you know he's incredibly good and he's snaking the head glitch. You can just take an easy 4v3 on the other side of the map, because he's never playing with this team.
I was talking with my chat. Yeah, I don't want you to be offended, and I don't want this player to be offended at all. I'm just curious, because I don't know what the dynamic is like in the team. I just don't know how Cellium can have the highest KD at every single event, and with the amount of maps that they've played in the entire event, and be placing the way, I don't know, bro. There's just moments where I looked at the minimap and I'm like, yo, this guy's got to move or something, bro. He's got to help his team out.
That's a heated question.
No, I'm not even trying to be heated, bro. Like, I'm not in the mix like that. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's just an observation more as a fan than anything of the CDL and Pro COD. You know what I mean?
Do you think like the whole Simp thing? It's one thing I want to bring up, and you know, you obviously play against him a lot. I think Simp has sort of been like, okay, because Cell's been on like this.
I feel like he's like a role player now. I feel like he became more of a role player, where it's like, I don't know. I feel like he's like a really good slayer.
What title did we see that at the beginning of? We were watching scrims and we're like, what the is Simp doing?
Vanguard.
It was Vanguard.
He's like a role player.
We were watching. I'm like, why is Simp just picking up gaps? And like, I was like, what is happening?
Do you think just like there's something with like Cell's play style where like obviously he's putting up good numbers, but maybe a little too selfish?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think based on, if you want my opinion, like my honest opinion, like looking at like New York, like looking at Seattle, like Kismet and Hydra were always working together and making plays, bouncing off each other. You kind of got the same thing with like Seattle a little bit, like even with like me and CleanX. Like I feel like sometimes he's a beast, 100%, one of the best players in the game to touch COD. But at the same time, I feel like also a slasher. I feel like it's not like I have a Scrappy. Like that guy is pace. Like he's challenge. But I feel like Cellium also is in these positions where it's like sometimes, like for example, when we played them, when we beat him online, like sometimes in that control, when I saw his name, I was like, yo, like I'm running away from this guy. Like he's getting on that heady, he's snaking. If I chow him, I'm probably gonna die. But I feel like there's times where like you can exploit his games, like his gameplay a little bit.
Right,
like if
it feels like he's just gonna lock his spots down, and you can just avoid him as a squad.
Yeah,
and that probably hurts like Simp's pace, because then he's got to fill a gap somewhere or something, and he's gonna be the one to do that.
So this has been a big question the last season or so, really, because Cellium won the MVP of the team, of course the entire season, and also the MVP of that FaZe team, and he was incredibly good. But whether his playstyle is not allowing them to achieve the results that their talent is capable of achieving is a big question mark. Yes, he's dropping crazy numbers, but it's not always translating, especially when they get to Championship Sunday. And Standy was like, well, look, in fairness, they have had a tough time against FaZe the last couple of seasons, Toronto, but of course it's kind of a new thing for Standy to play this FaZe team. And he says, well, yeah, they're really good, but Simp is not playing where he's most effective. Cellium is not being super impactful. So, I mean, look, obviously Crowder knows what they're doing, right? They've made this decision on how they want to play the game. But also for Cellium, you know, can he change the way he plays? Just because I do remember in Cold War, I think even his teammates said, look, Cell, please stop snaking. We're getting roasted by the other teams. Like, can we just stop, please? And he was like, nah, I don't care. Like, even his teammates, I think, were telling him to stop snaking, and he wasn't listening. So whether he's actually going to listen to changing his playstyle, if that is a necessity, that's a question to me, because it doesn't feel like the team is the same since Cellium has gone God mode, right? Like, they haven't had the results since Cell's been God mode. They were having the results when the SMGs were God modes, and I don't think that it's like Simp and aBeZy have fallen off as players, because like these guys are what, 21, 22? Like, they're not exactly not as good as they were when they were 2019. I don't imagine. Like, it's still very early days in their career. So yeah, maybe the competition's just higher, but it it feels like something is going wrong there within that FaZe camp, and I think Nadeshot seems to agree. And I do also think there's some element of hypocrisy from the pros on this, just because we've seen that, look, fans have said for maybe 6-7 months really that, well, is this playstyle from Cellium really working? And a lot of the pros will often say that, oh yeah, the fans only look at KDs, they just look at the numbers, they don't really look at the nuances of the reason why Kismet's so good. But even the pros, right, like they're happy to say, oh, Cell at a 1.3 he was frying, but they don't really seem to always talk about whether those kills are actually being the most impactful. I mean, we look at the numbers from the stage, like here goes Cell 90 rated, 1.3 in hardpoint, 1.3 in search, 1.2 in control, but yet the team's hardpoint and search and destroy record, okay, search and destroy record is good, largely down to aBeZy, and I think Slasher has a part to play in that because they were much better in search this year than they were last year. But for their hardpoint record to be 10 and 8, practically a 50-50 record with Cellium dropping a 1.3, feels a bit strange, and he's not getting really any hill time either. He's one of the lowest in the league for hill time, which isn't usually the case as an AR player. Do you really want your your SMGs to be the guys picking up the hill time? If you look at Los Angeles Thieves, Octane soaks up all the hill time. So I don't know if there's something they've got to think about there. So I mean, look, the other teams obviously, if you look at New York Subliners, right, you compare their kind of primary SMG and their primary AR together, their pace is so much different to what Simp and Cellium are doing on the map. Like, I mean, look, more pace usually equals better team. This is one of the reasons why, you know, pub players, the guy who's just on his 50-inch TV is so much worse than a pro, is that he doesn't know when to go fast, doesn't know when to go slow. The pros have a great idea of when to be aggressive, when to slow down, when to hold a head glitch, when to sit in a corner, and how to play at the same pace as your team. It just feels like something's been off with that between Cellium and the rest of the guys on FaZe. And if you look at the way Hydra's playing and Kismet's playing and Skies is playing as their main AR, it's so much more aggressive, it's so much more fluid. You see the same thing from Toronto really, where, you know, Scrappy is right up in your face all the time. Like, Scrappy's drawing 40 kills. Like, I don't think Cellium can even get to 40 kills. He just doesn't get into enough engagements to get to a 40 bomb, despite being able to go 27 in 13 without any issues. And it just feels like in the state of the game as it presently is, I'd much prefer my AR to go 27 in 27 than to go, you know, 24 in 13, for example. I want the more engagements as it stands, even if the KD isn't necessarily there. I don't know. It's always a bit of a controversial topic on that. I know there's been talks about that for years, that it's much better to go 30 in 25 than it is to go 25 in 10. But, you know, it also depends. Maybe the ARs are in a different position to the SMGs on that. But that's kind of how it seems to me, and it's obviously been a topic that's going around my head for quite some time and in the community's head, and now Nadeshot's saying it, now Standy's saying it. It feels like there might be some validity here. Now, either FaZe have to think about that, and also I do think it's strange in a way, the fact that when FaZe were dominating, Crowder was considered, oh yeah, Crowder's the GOAT, best coach of all time, guy's unreal. When Dallas Empire were doing very well, and then OpTic did well at the start of Vanguard, I was like, wow, Rambo's the GOAT, greatest ever. And now when they're struggling, it's like, oh, the coaches are terrible all of a sudden. So, you know, it's kind of maybe in between a little bit more. But look, OpTic Cellium is a weird outside possibility. I think even CDO Scrimintel said here in the replies that Zuma mentioned that he'd kind of heard the same thing, that OpTic Cell was at least a talking point. Now, this seems to be more like OpTic reached out to Cell to say, hey, if this Arcitys thing doesn't work, or we just straight up want you anyway. I wonder if it's possible that if OpTic would get Cellium, things might change around, there might be some playstyle differences, and maybe that's almost what is required in a way, because, I mean, look, this FaZe team, we thought during Cold War, when is this team ever going to blow it up? They've been dominating, like, are these guys going to dominate for years? Turns out not the case at all. Their dominance has really fallen flat over the last few events, and obviously last season as well, going into this season also. They haven't been the same team. Slasher comes through for Arcitys, and maybe it's not all that long away until we get Cellium breaking up from the tiny terrors. Not out of the realms of possibility, certainly the way things are going right now, and the pull that OpTic might potentially have as well on a similar line. But very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. A couple of funny things here. Firstly, between, you know, Scump and Formal, not convinced is Scump that this team of Scump, Formal, Moho, and X would absolutely get fried, as Pac-Man seems to believe back in the day. And also just to say this from Donny Temper, he's done a new music video for his new song Bacardi, so feel free to check this one out as well. But hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.